and artifacts in that nuraghe that we were running out of space in the church. I went to the mayor to ask him if we could find another place somewhere else to put all the stuff we were finding there. He told me to mind my own effing business because it was not my problem. Excuse my French, but that's what he said to me.
I'm Agos Vittorio, born on the 8th of January 1924. I live in Dolianova.
Have you ever seen any giants?
I've seen a dead one.
Where?
He was buried in the ground. As we were digging, we found the body of a dead person. And it was very long, incredibly long. It was as long as from where I'm sitting to the TV over there. It was incredibly big.
Was it really so big?
For sure, it was huge. I said to my friend, let's see if it's a woman because it might have rings or jewels.
Did he have any rings or jewels then?
No, nothing at all. But I know that in the past, when I was a boy, some of my employers found golden earrings near the place where I found the skeleton. In that area.
In the same area?
In the same area. That area, it's called Santa Lucia, near Serdiana. The bones were everywhere. I think there are more still buried out there.
I am Saio Virgilio, born on the 2nd of July 1915. I'm still alive, with 100 years on my shoulders. When I was a young man, I worked labor jobs for money. One day, while digging the foundations for a house with my colleague, we found some Roman coins dedicated to Emperor Pius. When we dug deeper, we unearthed a sarcophagus with a large stone lid. The lid was very heavy and difficult to remove, but eventually we managed to lift it off with our picks. When we opened the sarcophagus, we were shocked to find the corpse of a giant. It was dressed in a black garment. Its bones were very long and its head was enormous. It was definitely supernatural, not human. It was incredibly large. We couldn't believe our eyes. I told my other colleagues about it and they started saying, Uncle Virgilio dug up a corpse. He dug up a giant corpse. They went to tell the priest about it, and the priest came quickly. When he arrived, I was examining the Roman coins with the inscription of Marcus Pius, and the priest said, I'll take those. Give them to me. I have to take those coins to the regional council in Cagliari. So we asked the priest, what are we supposed to do with the skeleton? And he said, break it into pieces and bury it under the foundation of the house. And that's what we did. We buried it under the foundation. We also found some giants buried near the Albajara nuraghe. We were working for Natale Puscedo in his vineyards near the nuraghe. There were several other workers with me. We were using plows and spades because we didn't have tractors in those days. The bones of giants were everywhere in that field. We found more than 20 skeletons of giants buried one on top of the other in cross configurations. So then, all of a sudden, the owner of the vineyard comes and tells us, guys, we have to stop digging because the government is intervening. Well, I needed the money more than my colleagues, so I continued to work after they left. When the owner returned, he said, "What are you still doing here?" I said, "Well, I need to work, you know." He said, "No, no, no, stop. I'll pay you for an extra day, but you have to leave because people from the government are coming." The government inspectors arrived while we were still there. They took pictures of the giant skeletons and examined the entire place, even the walls of the nuraghe. They sealed up a passageway inside of the nuraghe. I don't know where it led, but they sealed it up, and they took away the bones of the giants.
Nuraghe Towers and the testimony of bones are not the only witnesses to giants in Sardinia. The ancient Nuragic culture itself bears all the hallmarks of a people interbred with the Rephaim. Rumors of human sacrifice and cannibalism have been associated with the mysterious Nuragic people since ancient times. In fact, many critics of Homer's Odyssey agree that Laestrygonia, the home of man-eating giants, was Sardinia. The tens of thousands of stone towers on the island alone could have inspired Homer's pen, but it was most likely the hundreds of imposing megalithic tombs that solidified Sardinia as the land of giants in the minds of the ancient Greeks. All over the island of Sardinia, there are massive stone sepulchres famed since time immemorial as tombs of the giants. Most of the megalithic stones that were once incorporated into these ancient monuments were dismantled long ago by the residents of the local villages, many of whom claim that the bodies of giants once occupied the tombs before they were exhumed and hauled away.
Even though these tombs are literally called the Tombs of the Giants, and the oldest legends of Sardinia recount that the bodies of dead giants were buried beneath them, conventional archaeologists deny that they had anything to do with giants. One of the most common contentions is that the bodies of the giants couldn't even fit inside of the tombs. It shouldn't surprise you that the people making this claim have never bothered to travel to Sardinia with a tape measure.
So Luigi's demonstrating here that certainly a 9-foot tall person, probably even a 10-foot tall person, could indeed fit into this space. Remembering that these stones here have fallen in at least 6 inches or so. The rocks would have probably sat somewhere about where my hand is. Certainly enough room to fit 9, 10-foot giant. I verified that the bodies of giants could indeed fit into the tombs of the giants, contrary to the claims of armchair archaeologists. But it turns out that the contention is actually irrelevant, because many of the megalithic tombs were not designed to house the bodies of giants. Instead, they were built on top of them.
So this is one of the 2 different examples of the giant tombs we have in Sardinia. You have 2 different tombs. This one has a huge stele with a little fake door. And then you have the gallery or corridor. The body was inhumate, which means it was buried underneath, and it was buried first. Then the monument, the tomb, was built on top, once the body had already been buried. Apart from the archaeological explanations, we have legends in Sardinia which say that these tombs were used by young boys to stay in contact with the soul of the ancestors, where they used to spend some days and nights meditating alone, totally alone. This is called the incubation rite. Somehow, these children who were passing into childhood, were becoming adult, had to absorb the energy and power of the ancestors, and these are also described as giants or heroes. So we know that in legend there's always some truth. And even if the door looks small, we assume that the body of the person buried inside the tomb was buried first on a ditch, and then the monument was built on top. So it's not that the body was placed inside the tomb after the building was constructed, the other way around.
So the interior of these tombs was not necessarily built to house a body, but most likely the body would have been buried beneath the tomb, and the aperture inside of the tomb was used for young boys during a rite of passage ceremony.
Exactly.
They would crawl into the opening, and then they would sit down in the gallery to absorb the might, the power of the mighty ones that are buried beneath them.
Yeah, to become braver and to become more stronger and to become adult.
Because those who were buried in these tombs, the entities
Had
that were
some
buried in
powers.
these tombs were heroes, were mighty ones.
Yeah, they were the bravest.
So this is the tomb of one of the tombs of the giants. There are many of these dispersed all over Sardinia. This is the actual tomb of the model that we were looking at in the museum in Cagliari, in the capital of Sardinia. This tomb, when it was newly constructed, would have looked just like that model depicted. This is the inner chamber where Paula was telling us that the young people would come in to spend the night in order to absorb the power, the valor, the prowess of the mighty one, or the hero buried beneath the soil, who very likely, in my opinion, was a giant. We know that the giants were known as the great heroes, even in Greek mythology, even in Roman lore, were the great heroes and the mighty ones. The Bible calls them the Gibborim, the mighty ones, of old, of renown. And those are exactly the kind of entities that were buried here beneath the soil, beneath these graves, these megalithic structures. Some of the largest stones that I've seen incorporated into the megalithic structures in Sardinia have been used in the tombs of the giants. Like the one I'm standing on right now, it's just absolutely massive. These stones would have been very difficult for normal-sized people to maneuver, to move, unless they were using some kind of technology that is lost to us today.
The tombs of the giants provide us with an important clue regarding the origin of the neurologic culture. Giants were considered to be the sons of the gods, the mighty men, and the heroes of old who had divine blood coursing through their veins. So the worship of the giants and the enshrinement of their dead bodies was a common theme in the ancient world, especially among the Canaanites.
In the mid-1800s, two academics, one a Jesuit scholar named Antonio Bresciani, and the other an Oxford-educated lawyer named John Tyndale, conducted separate investigations into the Nuragic civilization of Sardinia. They studied the Nuraghi towers, the tombs of the giants, and the cultural traditions of the Sardinian people. What's intriguing is that both of these men came to the very same conclusion. The Nuragic civilization was most likely founded by the Canaanites, who they believed had migrated to the island either before or during the conquest of Canaan by Joshua and the Israelites.